High FM, 101.9 megahertz of life.
Joining us on the line, Phumlani Majozi. He's a senior fellow at at African Liberty. He's a commentator on politics, economics, and global affairs. A very good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Great, a pleasure. So we wanted to chat to you because you are fairly outspoken on this issue, and I wanted your thoughts on it. We've seen quite a disturbing trend, and in fact, it's interesting that one of our listeners, Mervyn, talking about the alcohol ban. He's running low on what I consider to be a bad whiskey, but that's just my taste. But the point is that the cigarette industry, the entertainment industry, restaurants, etc., very politely lobbying government, trying to make headway. We see the taxi industry perhaps a little bit less polite, getting exactly what it is that they want. The teachers' union getting exactly what it is that they want. Does government only listen to those who scream the loudest?
Well, it seems to me it's not only that they are listening to those who are screaming the loudest. They are also listening to those who are even much more closer to them, right? When you look at the unions in South Africa, COSATU, we all know that there has been a special kind of relationship between them and the ANC. That dates back to the dawn of our democracy. So, I mean, if you are closer to them like that, definitely you'll be heard because there is that kind of alliance I'm talking about. And we've seen this trend with the ANC over the past 25 years, that those people who are closer to them, they tend to get what they want. Now, the taxi industry is quite an interesting case because I wouldn't argue that they are much closer to the ANC. But we all know how the industry kind of operates, the taxi industry. We have seen some kind of troubling levels of violence over the past 25 years in the taxi industry. So I think government as well kind of has that fear that if they don't get sort of give what the taxi industry wants, there will be some sort of violent chaos within the industry, which could somehow harm the people. So I think those who have the loudest voices, they are getting what they want. But I think also there is this kind of, a reaction from government depending on who they are dealing with, which is kind of unfair when you look at it. Because when you look at the restaurant industry, these people are being peaceful, yet people have lost jobs there. The industry there is being shut down. You look at the liquor industry, which we've just mentioned now. Again, from that side, those people are losing. So, I mean, there's been a lot of imbalances, or sort of there hasn't been uniformity in government's approach in these industries, which again comes back to me. I just think that there is politics involved in the whole situation.
But then is it not dangerous that it's so clear that government only responds to fear? Because I think it's not just government, all of us. We know that whenever something is taxis are involved, there's always a threat of violence. Is that not dangerous? Because now it will believe the rest of us to think, well, for government to listen, we need to engage in violent acts.
Yeah, what are the lessons learned?
That's very dangerous and it's totally unacceptable, right? Our expectations from government is that our government should provide what's called, it must ensure that there is law and order, right? And also there is basically security for its citizens. So we cannot have industries like, for example, let's be specific, the taxi industry, where government fears it because there will be a backlash of some sort, and they cannot contain that. Government must be able to apply its sort of law and order principles across everybody. It shouldn't matter who you are and where you come from, but they must have the capability to withstand and be able to apply sort of their policy, in a uniform way across. So it's quite troubling that our government, we have that kind of government that can just be pressured by groups and then somehow it succumbs for various reasons, which could be that they have some sort of fears, or for politics, as we see with the unions, because, ANC gets a big chunk of votes from unions like COSATU and others and so on.
So how do we break that cycle? Because unfortunately the lessons learned and the lessons that each of us learn is the only way to get anything done is with some kind of a threat. And obviously I would never support anything violent, but it seems to be that pressure is the only thing that government is responding to. And we know this. We know that a few weeks ago when alcohol was re-banned, we know that the government didn't meet with the alcohol industry. They only met with the taxi industry. And that says it all.
That says a lot. But you see, in these interest groups, I think it's very important to understand that what's happening about what we are talking about right now, it's not a South African kind of a unique thing.
For sure, you're right.
All over the world, it seems to be the case that politicians, there are these in America. One could argue, at least, there's been. It's quite clear that that teachers' unions and other groups as well somehow are aligned to various parties, right? One could argue that. So it's not a unique thing to South Africa. But what can we do as citizens to avoid something like that, where we have politicians who are siding with interest groups? What has to happen is that we need to recognize, and basically this is a long route and it's a difficult one, but it's something that we need to think about, and that is we have to change the party that is governing. Because and as long as these people are in power, they will always be doing such things, aligning themselves with different interest groups for the purposes of getting votes, right? So we as a society, we need to recognize, and I'm not sure our democracy is well versed enough to understand that what needs to happen is that the ANC, for us to avoid where we are right now, there's got to be a change of power, right, in governance. That means removing the ANC and putting somebody else who will not be doing that, or at least we should say, if you do that, we are also going to vote you
because
out.
You're going to
That's
be accountable.
the only way.
So
Yeah.
the point that you make is an interesting one, because we have seen, South Africa is a very young democracy, and I know that everyone says, 25 years, everything should be right. It's not. It's naive to think that. If we follow the progress of democracies around the world, many countries have been through this. England went through this. The United States went through this, with fighting and reaching a point that a government that was actually almost created by the unions now has to stand up to that beast, because it can't allow the unions to control everything, every aspect of the running of a country. And as I say, we've seen this around the world, where you have eventually the standoff between the two. The question is if the ANC is strong enough and willing enough to be able to do that, or, as you say, do they have to simply be voted out and have somebody else replace them who will be able, who doesn't have this historical tie and won't capitulate at over any point.
The great example, and I think Prince Mashele, one of South Africa's famous political analysts, has said something that I agree with, and that is Ramaphosa could take a few lessons from Margaret Thatcher. Right. In the sense that Margaret Thatcher stood up to unions that were running amok in the UK when she came to power in early 80s. Right. She stood up against them and pushed back, because you don't want to have interest groups and unions and so on sort of controlling it and sort of swaying policy in their favor. Right now, the expectations were that from Ramaphosa, at least I was expecting when Ramaphosa came in, that he would be that kind of a leader, right, that would push back against the unions. But it seems to be, sort of an old guard of the ANC. I mean, he himself comes from he has a union background, from unions. So maybe it was naive of us to think of that he could strongly push back against the unions in South Africa. But I mean, that means we'd have to find a leader within the ANC. And Howard, I don't see who in the ANC could push back strongly against the unions. I mean, this is an alliance that's old enough for the whole 26 years. Who can do that? It's not going to happen. So rather, I think the one thing we need to think about is, of course, the most kind of difficult one given our current political setting, but it's to at some point we'll only win as a society when the ANC can kind of loses power. That's the only actual win we're going to get as a country.
Yeah, it's so interesting because one just wonders where we go to from here, and anything that is a crisis. When you see the COVID-19 pandemic, that is going to exacerbate any one of these cracks or these flaws within government. We're certainly seeing it, and we've only got a few minutes left. I just wanted to address it as well. Is the devastating news, the absolutely devastating, I think, news around corruption and the amount of money that has been stolen out of the COVID-19 relief funds, and the Sunday Times and My Broadband estimating it could be up to R1 billion that has been stolen or siphoned off because of corruption.
And what has happened there is that Ramaphosa spoke about this last week in his address. But the thing is, people, because of how slow things have been, or at least we haven't been over the past 2 years of Ramaphosa's presidency, seen like serious people sort of being prosecuted. I would look at the Zondo Commission. I mean, the news we have here there of the serious people being involved in sort of corrupt activities. People have been quite disappointed that we haven't seen sort of prosecutions taking place up to now based on that. So already around the COVID-19's funds being stolen, people have been asking, should we take this guy seriously, right? Because we haven't really seen any actions being taken where, serious corruption have been exposed. So, I mean, there's been a bit of negativity there. My view is that even that, just as what we've seen from the Zondo Commission, even addressing COVID-19 stolen funds in terms of prosecutions and investigations and so on, that's going to take time for a while because of the nature of how slow our sort of prosecution processes are, clearly. So that's going to take time as well. Obviously, it's going to disappoint more people, as I am disappointed as well by the speed of things in that front.
Yeah. Sanati?
I don't know. And just on, is it the processes that are slow to actually prosecute people, or do you think that it's people wanting to delay the processes?
Well, what we hear from the prosecutions authority, Shamila Bato here said that her office, they kind of had to deal with a lot of paperwork, right? There was so much sort of cleaning up they had to do when they came in.
Yeah, because
and
they
then
were
they
captured.
said, I think they would. Sorry?
Because they were captured. She had to take control again.
So I mean, that's the reason they've given us, that there's so much sort of paperwork and cleanup they've had to do that could take at least 1.5 years or so. So those are the reasons they've given us. But I think as well, I think it's fair to say that there is also some sort of delays from whoever may be involved in the whole kind of situation. And our legal system. You've seen Jacob Zuma doing all he can to do not enter the court. So we do have some evidence that show that these people are these powerful people in political cycles. They tend to do almost everything to delay the process. So I think it's a kind of a two-way thing. But people are getting frustrated. I am getting frustrated. I hope you guys are getting frustrated.
Absolutely.
That we are not going the speed. We are not seeing the results. Things getting faster in that aspect.
And in the meantime, money is just being eaten and eaten
just
and
flowing
eaten
out, and that's the problem. Look, the next thing they're going to have to deal with is a tax revolt, because there is absolutely no confidence that money that is going to the state is being dealt with, is being handled correctly. And I certainly don't support a tax revolt, but it is a reality that people will be a lot less supportive of a government. Linda Warren says, Mr. Majozi, I really like your thoughts and views. I'm a Twitter fan. Come now, Parliament needs you urgently. And Martin says, in a perfect world, taxis would have to toe the line, yet pragmatically, it is not that simple. Phumlani Majozi, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Very interesting views indeed, and at least providing some perspective.